I was never good at anything. I was never picked for any team, and if I was picked, I was the first person cut. I got lousy grades in every class. I got fired from multiple jobs. I even got fired from a job pumping gas once. Can you imagine that? Being fired for pumping gas because you're no good. They came out and said, you're no good at pumping gas. How can you be no good? Little old ladies can pump gas. And here I was no good at pumping gas. Anyway, so I got fired. I went from job to job. And then I discovered that all people who are successful are excellent at what they do. You know the old question they asked Willie Sutton, the bank robber, why do you rob banks? He said, well, that's where the money is. Well, being in the top 10% is where the money is. So what you have to do is you have to pay any price and make any sacrifice to get into the top 10% in your field. Now, here's the good news. If you're doing what you love to do, you will want to be in the top 10% in your field. If you don't want to be excellent at what you're doing, it means you're in the wrong field. It just means that you're marking time, you're treading water. And there's a lot of people who are in their field and they do their job and they go home at night and don't think about their work and so on. And this kind of an attitude means that you have no future. You have a very shaky present. That crackling sound you hear is the ice breaking under your feet, okay? And you have no future, because if you're not doing what you love to do and throwing your whole heart into it, you're just marking time. But everybody is designed so that there is something that you love to do that you can do well. And the fact that you love it means that you probably have the ability to excel at it. So make this decision to get into the top 10%. And let me tell you what changed my life. Here I was struggling in my late 20s, and I learned this. It was a breakthrough thought. Is that everybody's in the top 10% started in the bottom 10%. Everybody who's doing well was once doing poorly. Everybody who is at the top of your field today was once not even in your field at all and didn't even know it existed. What that means is that if you're willing to pay the price and work hard and make the sacrifices, you can get into the top 10%. Now, how long does it take? It doesn't take a week or a month. Most people are really impatient. And to achieve mastery in your field takes 5 to 7 years. The time is going to pass anyway. The time is going to pass. 5 to 7 years from now, 5 to 7 years will have passed. The only question is, are you going to be at the top of your field, or are you still going to be down there with the mediocre 80%? And the wonderful thing is this is nobody's better than you, and nobody's smarter than you. If anybody else is at the top of their field, it means that you can be at the top of your field. Just go to them and find out how they got there, because they started at the bottom. Now, it may take longer for some people and less for others, but everybody who puts one foot in front of the other and keeps moving eventually gets there. And that's where all the rewards are. And not only that, that's where all the joy in life is. When you're really good at what you do, you feel wonderful about yourself. You're respected and esteemed by everybody around you. You can write your own ticket. You can open any door when you're good at what you do. Because you get up in the morning and you know you're good. And that is more important than the rewards that go with it.
You become what you think about most of the time. You become what you think about most of the time. So what do you think about most of the time? And we have interviewed thousands and thousands of successful people. Do you know what successful people think about most of the time? One study at the University of Pennsylvania, 350,000 business people, entrepreneurs like yourself, were interviewed over a 22-year period. And they found that the top 10% thought very differently from average people. The top 10% thought about what they wanted and how to get it most of the time. They're always thinking about what they wanted and how to get it. So what do you think the bottom 80% were thinking about? They were thinking about what they didn't want and who was to blame. This seems to be a natural tendency worldwide. We're always thinking about who is to blame for our problems. We're always thinking about something that happened in the past that we cannot change. So top people think about what they want and the actions that they can take now to get the things they want. And they're so busy taking action, they don't have time to think about anything else. Now here's another discovery, and I spend many hours teaching this, is that you can only think one thought at a time. You can think a positive thought or a negative thought. If you think a positive thought, it pushes out all negative thoughts. If you think a negative thought, it pushes out all positive thoughts. But if you do something repeatedly over and over again, you soon develop a habit. And top people have the habit of thinking a positive thought all the time. And what is the most positive thought of all? Thinking about what you want. thinking about the things that make you happy, thinking about the future and where your life is going. And so successful people are always thinking and talking about the future. They could be thinking and talking about the people that they love and their families and their home. They could be thinking and talking about business and money and success. But they're always thinking and talking about what they want most of the time. And so if you develop the habit of thinking about what you want, your life begins to transform. It's almost like a great ship in the ocean. As you begin to think different thoughts, the whole direction of the ship moves, and you go to a different destination.
To see yourself as self-employed. What we found is the top 3% of adults in our society see themselves as self-employed. They see themselves as in charge of their own lives. When I started off my career as a young man, I was 21 years old, working as a construction laborer, living in a one-bedroom apartment, broke, taking buses 2 hours every morning to get to work and buses 2 hours to get back. I still remember that, and I still remember a light going off one evening. I was sitting there in my little apartment, in my little kitchen alcove, and I suddenly realized that I was responsible, that I was in charge of my own life, that no one was coming to the rescue. And it was one of the great turning points in my life. So what you find is that all exceptional people are highly responsible people. They look upon themselves as self-employed. Sometimes I'll ask an audience, I'll say, how many people here are self-employed? And some people will raise their hand and some won't. I'll say, now what's the true answer to this question? And the true answer is that everyone is self-employed. The biggest mistake you could ever make is to ever think you work for anyone else but yourself. Even if someone else signs your paycheck for you all your life, the most valuable people in any organization are the people who treat the company as though it belongs to them. They see everything that happens as affecting them personally. They're not the 9-to-5ers, the no-hopers that say, well, I go to work, when I'm not at work, I don't think about my work. These people, somebody has told them that's a clever way to think. It's the way losers think. Winners think about their company, and when they're not there, they think about how they can do it better. When something happens in their company, they take it personally because they see themselves as highly responsible. As a result, they're paid more, they're given more educational opportunities, they're promoted faster, and these are the people that eventually, like cream, rise to the top of every organization and every industry, the top 3%.
There's a rule that says to achieve a goal that you've never achieved before, you have to develop a skill that you've never had before. You have to become excellent at something that you've not been excellent at before. There's always a price that you have to pay to achieve a new goal, and in our age, it's almost always the development of a new skill. So what is your new skill? When I work with companies, I say, what is the one thing that you offer to your customers that no one else can offer? Some of the other speakers will talk about this in great depth because it's one of the great questions. Why should somebody buy your product rather than buy the product of your competitor? But personally, you can ask, why should somebody hire you rather than hire someone else and pay them the same amount of money?
In order to achieve something you've never achieved before, you have to become someone you've never been before. And it's a really important insight is the qualities that you need to develop, qualities on the inside to become a self-made millionaire are incredible qualities that make you a vastly better person. Not only better in terms of character, determination, discipline, decision-making, strength, and so on, but they make you a far better person. They round out your character in a far better way. So the real payoff of becoming wealthy is not because you can eat more, because how many more meals can you eat? How many more clothes can you wear? But it's the kind of person that you become, and then the kind of people that you associate, the kind of life that you have.
So here's a simple way to become one of the highest paid and most productive people in society is do only number one tasks. Do only those things that are moving you every day toward the goals that you say you want to achieve. You want to earn more money, be happier, be healthier, move up in your business, have a nice house and a car, travel. Only do those things all day long. If you only do those things, the things that have great potential consequences, it transforms your life. Now here's another discovery. 95% of what you do comes from habit. And if you do something repeatedly over and over again, what do you develop? You develop a new habit. So what is the difference between people in the top 20% and people in the bottom 80%? And I've studied this for years. People in the top 20% have success habits, and people in the bottom 80% do not have those habits. So you can learn the habits of highly successful people. You can learn the habits of highly paid people. You can learn the habits of people who get into the top 10% and into the top 20%. And you can learn them with practice, because all habits are learnable. All skills are learnable. There is no limit to what you can accomplish if you just simply dedicate yourself to developing the habits of other successful people. Once you've decided on the most important idea to achieve your most important goal, then you have to concentrate single-mindedly on one thing until it's complete. Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, the richest man in the world and the third richest man, were at a dinner party at Bill Gates' home last year. And there were about 100 guests, and they were standing around at the reception, drinking wine and so on. And these three men, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Bill Gates' father, are good friends. And so they were standing, talking, and one of the other guests came up and said, "Excuse me, gentlemen, you are three of the most important people in the world. What would you say is the most important key to success today?" And they stopped talking, and they all turned, and they said, "Focus. Focus is the most important quality for success today." We're so surrounded by so many distractions of so many kinds that the ability to focus is more important for success than any other quality. When you think about your goals and how to achieve them, it makes you happy. So people who are thinking about their goals are happy most of the time. They're more positive. They're more creative. They have better friendships. They have more energy. They get up earlier and they work harder because they have clarity about what they want. Only 3% of adults have written goals. And according to 75 years of research, people with written goals earn 10 times as much as people without written goals. People with written goals accumulate 10 times as much money over the course of their life as people without written goals. And what does it cost for you to write down your goals? It costs a piece of paper and a pen and about 3 minutes of your time. If you will write down 10 goals that you want to accomplish in the next year, you'll change your life forever. Everything that you write down, not type, but everything that you write down by hand is immediately saved to your subconscious computer, and your subconscious then works on it 24 hours a day. Give a clear deadline. Tell your subconscious when you want the goal to be achieved. And if you don't achieve it by the deadline, set a new deadline. But give your subconscious clear instructions so your child mind can work on it all the time. You spend 99% of your time thinking about yourself. So you are the most important person. But here's the point. How important you feel you are determines the entire quality of your life. When you feel that you're important and valuable, when you like yourself and respect yourself, you set bigger goals for yourself, you persist longer, you accomplish more. And more than anything else, the more you like yourself, the happier you are. The more you like yourself, the more you like other people, and the more they like you. So everything in life, and this was a great insight for me as a young man, everything in life can be measured by whether or not it increases your happiness. The only real measure in life is how happy are you. It's not how much money you earn, or it's not the car you drive, but are you a thoroughly happy person? So I began studying this subject early in my career, and I was amazed to find that your self-esteem is like the reactor core of a nuclear generator. It's the reactor core of your emotions, and your self-esteem determines the entire quality of your life. Now, the more powerful you feel, the more you like yourself. The more you like yourself, the more self-confidence you have. The more self-confidence you have, the bigger goals you set, and the more you persist, and the more that you achieve. And everything starts with what's happening inside of yourself. So here's an interesting question. Which comes first, the thought or the emotion? Well, when I first learned this, I was quite amazed that it's always the thought. It's the thought that comes first, and it's the way that you interpret this thought to yourself that determines the emotion. If something happens and you interpret it in a positive way, you feel happy. If something happens and you interpret it in a negative way, you feel negative.
Nature is neutral. In other words, nature doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care if you're tall or short or male or female or black or white, educated or uneducated. Nature doesn't care. All that nature cares is that you do what successful people do. It's like making a recipe. Nature doesn't care if you follow a recipe. If you follow the recipe exactly, you get the dish. Nature doesn't care who's doing it. And that's the wonderful thing about our society. It's basically like justice. It's blind, is nature doesn't care. In fact, there are a lot of people who are not as smart and not as talented as you who are doing vastly better than you, not because they're better, but because they're just following proven success methods. There's nothing that will make you madder than to see somebody who's dumber than you, who's making more money than you.
There are many things in our world that we cannot change. So don't waste any time worrying about things you can't change. Focus on the things that you can change. And the only thing that you can control is the way you think. If you think differently, you feel and you act differently. If you feel and act differently, you get different results and you achieve different goals. So you'll find that top people throughout history are always focusing on the opportunities of tomorrow, whereas average people are always thinking about the problems of the past. All the psychologists and psychiatrists and counselors in the world are helping people talk about their past and what happened in the past and why they feel unhappy about the past. But you can't change the past. The only thing you can do with the past is learn from it and then let it go. So you learn from the past and let it go, and then you turn toward the future. There's a wonderful line, and the line says that when you turn toward the sunshine, the shadows fall behind you. When you look toward the future and all the possibilities for your life in the future, you automatically become happy. The negative events of the past that you can't control fall behind you. And that is your job.
Fear of failure is the greatest single obstacle to success in adult life. And it's not failure itself, because each one of you is a professional failure. Each one of you has failed over and over and over again. Isn't that true? All of us fail. All human beings fail over and over. 9 out of 10 things that we try don't work out the way we expected. We have failures in relationships and in jobs and in careers and investments and everything. It's not the failure that holds you back. The failure makes you smarter. We say that it is the fear of failure, not failure, that holds you back. And the way that you overcome failure is you never consider the possibility of failure. The rule is this, is there's no such thing as failure, there's only feedback. Is when you try something that doesn't work, you get feedback, not failure. And recognize that most things you try aren't going to work the first few times. So what you do is you say, oh, that's an interesting bit of feedback. And you pick yourself up and you move forward and you have more feedback and you move forward. To become a self-made millionaire, you're going to fail over and over again, year after year after year. But your brain has a cybernetic mechanism, which means that every time you try something, you get feedback, which makes you smarter. And when you try something else, you get feedback, which makes you smarter. And eventually, you reach the point where you're too smart and you stop making mistakes. You start to do more and more things right and fewer things wrong. But you can't get there unless you have experienced the failures. Henry Ford once said that failure is merely an opportunity to more intelligently begin again.
One thing that only you can do is to learn. No one else can do it for you. No one else can give it to you. Only you can learn new things through hard work. And when I discovered the idea of continuous learning, I thought it was like a miracle.
Take every course that you possibly can. The courses and seminars that are available to you in your field that are given by professionals that are courses that have been developed over years and years and years. They have been tested and tested and tested. The person who is talking to you for several hours has spent thousands of hours learning their subject. They have dry tested this or done test runs with thousands of other people. When you take a course, you can learn enough information in 1 or 2 days, more than you could learn in 2 or 3 years or maybe even a lifetime, all distilled and put together. People say, I can't afford a course. You cannot afford not to buy books. You can't afford not to go to courses. Some years ago, I had a dentist, and he was a very successful dentist. I was recommended to me by a friend. And this dentist retired at the age of 53. And just before he retired, he sold his practice for about $2 million. Just before he retired, he told me why. He said about 8 years before, he had attended a dental congress in Hong Kong. This is from California. He'd flown all the way to Hong Kong to attend this International Dental Congress because there were specialists giving private lectures, sort of plenary sessions on the side. And he attended this session, and it was on a particular technique of cosmetic surgery that this dentist had developed that no one else knew, where you could basically straighten out a person's entire front jaw so they look beautiful at a very low cost, at a very high level of effectiveness. He came back and he began implementing this in his practice. People began flying from 500 and 1,000 miles away. Every dentist sent their families, members, and themselves to this dentist. He was able to charge whatever he wanted to charge. He said 8 years later, he retired as a self-made millionaire at the age of 53 to enjoy his money for the rest of his life from what he learned from one session at one convention at one course. Now, that is a true story, and maybe it's an exception, but you can never tell where the information is going to come from.